What is up, guys? It's your boy Build Crafting Cactus, and today we are going to be showcasing an absolutely broken Titan build that actually makes you invincible. Now, you might be thinking, surely this guy is exaggerating. I bet if you're in a Grandmaster and multiple champions were bearing down on you, I bet you'd die. Well, that's where you'd be wrong.
How? I just got res farm. Stunned.
So, if you ever wanted a build that lets you literally stroll through the hardest Grandmaster Nightfalls in the game, absolutely trivializing them, well, this is the build for you. And so, let's get started. But first of all, guys, I've partnered with Mobalytics, your #1 source for Destiny 2 builds. Simply click the link in the description down below to see the entire build and all of its requirements laid out in an easy to read, easy to understand format, including dim links. After you've watched the video, of course, so you know exactly how the build works, because there's a lot of funky stuff going on with this build. And we've got to start here with the featured exotic armor piece. And that is going to be the Stronghold Exotic Gauntlets. So what this does is that it maximizes guard stats on equipped swords, you take reduced damage while blocking with a sword, and rapidly damaging targets after blocking shots with a sword grants restoration for a duration determined by the number of shots blocked. Essentially, this gives you infinite sword block. You can hold the block button with any sword in the game with the strongholds indefinitely. It will never run out of block. Now, this has actually been a thing for a while. Titans have always been able to throw on the strongholds and basically be unkillable, but traditionally in the past, this build has a huge problem, and that is, okay, you can't die, but you also can't kill anything, because the only way to do damage was to attack with your sword or switch weapons, and then you're vulnerable again. But thanks to some changes in episode Heresy, not anymore, and that all hinges on one sword perk, guys, and that is Flash Counter. This got an update in episode Heresy, and now it says blocking damage after raising your guard emits a short-range blast that disorients targets. And guys, that disorienting blast actually does a chunk of damage, and this enables so many different shenanigans, because now you're actually able to damage enemies while you are blocking. And so the first shenanigan is going to come when we take a look at our subclass. So we're using a Striker Titan with Thunder Crash. Importantly, you have to have Rally Barricade, and then we've got Thunderclap. This doesn't matter as much. We have Pulse Grenades, which are very important, and then we of course have Storm's Keep. Now this says when you're behind your Rally Barricade or any barricade, you can actually discharge your Bolt Charge with weapon damage. And that means when we are guarding behind our Rally Barricade, and you're going to see this in the background gameplay, the Flash Counter damage will trigger Storm's Keep, and we are causing those super powerful Bolt Charge lightning bolts while we are standing there guarding invincible. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. After that, we have Touch of Thunder. Now, the reason we're not using Knockout is simply because we are not able to use our charged melee while holding a sword, and even though when you kill an enemy with your sword, you'll see Knockout appear in the corner of your screen, it doesn't trigger health regeneration, and it also doesn't improve your sword damage. So we are going with Touch of Thunder to improve our pulse grenades massively, and it's going to let us throw our grenades while we have our sword out, so you actually are throwing your grenades a lot with this build, and these basically turn your pulse grenades into nuclear bombs, especially combined with the Spark of Shock Fragment, which also makes them jolt. Like, it just makes your grenades incredible. On top of that, our next fragment is Spark of Ions, so defeating jolted targets, you know, thanks to our grenade, or guys with Bolt Charge, which we're doing a lot, will generate Ionic Traces, so that's a ton more ability regen. Then we've got Spark of Resistance for even more damage resistance, and then we have Spark of Frequency for just more Bolt Charge activations, guys. So, After that, the next absolute shenanigan here, guys, comes from what sword we're using, and that is going to be the Abyssal Edge. Now, originally, I was actually running this with the Thin Precipice, and technically, you could use this as well. It's craftable, so this might be more accessible for a lot of people, but the reason we want to use one of those two swords is, again, because both of them have access to flash counter, and they're both strand. So what this means, guys, is that in your seasonal artifact, if you have unraveling orbs, that will give strand weapons unraveling rounds for simply picking up an orb of power. And then you can combine that with Horde Shuttle, which will cause threadlings to spawn when damaging unraveled targets. And so as you can see in the background gameplay, that means when you're holding block invincible with your sword, it's also technically doing strand damage. So it's causing unraveling rounds to fly around and attack enemies, and also spawning threadlings. So think about that for a second, guys. You are holding block. You essentially cannot be killed. You have so much damage resistance, and now your sword is damaging enemies, causing bolt charge lightning bolts, causing unraveling rounds, spawning threadlings. And there's one more thing you can use as well, which is the all-new Power of Ambition. This is available through the new reward track in like the upgraded vendor that you can get. Check out my guide on what exactly is going on this season with Act 2 if you want to know what that's all about. But this will actually deal damage. Rapid hits with this weapon grants blight rounds, dealing damage over time to targets hit by this weapon, and it can stun overload champions. So you can actually see in the background gameplay right here, it activate, and then this Lost Sector boss like take a bunch of little ticks of damage. That's Power of Ambition. So again, it will trigger from the flash counter blasts. So we have just one more thing that will do damage while we're blocking, and all those little ticks of damage, that means even more bolt charge lightning activations. Just absurd, guys. But guys, if all of that wasn't insane enough, all of those offensive capabilities that you get while blocking will actually trigger the restoration from your strongholds. That is right. When Bungie programmed the strongholds into the game, they never imagined all of the damage you could do while blocking. So it doesn't actually say that you have to swing your sword. So the flash counter damage, the damage from the seasonal artifact perk, all of the unraveling rounds and threadlings, that will trigger restoration while you're guarding. You can see here, I never swing my sword, and I have restoration ×2. So as if 99% damage resistance wasn't enough, you're also going to be having restoration ×2 all the time for constant healing while using this build. Yeah, it really is broken. Okay, moving on from there, guys, let's take a look at the other weapons here. We have a Tenacious Mastery, just because it is an absolutely fantastic special weapon here. Chill Clip dealing with multiple champions. Also, we have Barrier Piercing Sidearms this season. Then we have the Le Monarque. Now, this also has a broken interaction with Bolt Charge, because the poison damage that Le Monarque causes, all of those poison ticks will build and discharge your Bolt Charge more often. So you can see we're actually DPSing the Grandmaster boss with Le Monarques because of how many Bolt Charge activations you get. It is actually crazy how much damage this thing does when you're sitting behind a Storm's Keep rally barricade. And that leads into the next part. This build kind of has two different modes. You are either going to be blocking with your sword nigh unkillable while you do this extra damaging stuff, or you're going to be sitting behind your rally barricade. So you use your blocking sword to get to an advantageous position, you put down your rally barricade, and because sitting behind your rally barricade offers about 90% damage resistance, seriously, like you're basically invincible behind a rally barricade, then you just start picking enemies away with your Le Monarque, and you're going to be seeing that in the background gameplay, while also, you know, throwing your pulse grenades or using your Tenacious Mastery. Then on top of that, guys, we have our armor mods. So for the helmet here, we've got, you know, heavy ammo finder, but honestly, you don't really need this. This is for if you like to swing your sword a lot, but hey, you use no sword ammo when you're blocking, so you don't really need this. But Dynamo is very, very good because we're using our class ability so much, guys. And also Strand Siphon will work because of flash counter. So you're holding block and now you're spitting out orbs as well. Just crazy, guys. Then we've actually got 2 bolstering detonations and then a firepower. Again, we're not really using our charged melee in this build. Then damage resistances depending on what you're doing, guys. And then after that, we've got just 1 void weapon surge, but honestly, you could do away with this for something like Orbs of Restoration, just for a little bit more low monarch damage. Then we've got absolution and recuperation. Again, our damage is actually coming from bolt charge, so we don't need it for the weapons as much. And lastly, guys, we've got a Reaper. Again, we're using our class ability non-stop. That's combined with a powerful attraction, so you can suck up all the orbs you're producing from Reaper and so on, and also a bomber just to get more of our very good grenades, guys. And then the last thing I want to point your attention to, and very importantly, is that we have quite a different artifact layout than I think a lot of other builds utilize. So different champion rounds depending on what you're using, doesn't matter too much. Then we obviously want Volatile Marksman because of the low monarch, and then we want Unraveling Orbs because of our Strand Sword. But then we want Dielectric for sure. We want Photonic Flare. Defeating an exhausted or severed target with arc damage releases a blinding burst. Well, guys, exhaust is applied by overload disrupting combatants. So the low monarch has built-in overload rounds, and so that means you're going to be exhausting everyone you shoot, and that means you're going to get a ton of blinding blasts, so that's awesome. Then we've got Maligned Harvest, obviously again because of the low monarch. We have Flashover for more bolt charge, guys, and then we have Horde Shuttle, obviously. Then the last 2 perks are actually really important. We have Defibrillating Blast. Stunning a champion grants maximum stacks of bolt charge, obviously great, and then triggers an arc bolt that heals you and jolts combatants that it damages. Guys, this is worded incredibly poorly. It kind of sounds like, oh, you have to do the champion stun to get all of this. No, 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 no. How it actually works in game is that every bolt charge, lightning bolt discharge heals you. Every single bolt charge lightning bolt will cause healing. That is crazy, as if this build wasn't survivable enough. And then lastly, guys, we have a Limit Break, casting your super while you are critically wounded, or importantly, have an elemental buff matching your super. So we pretty much always have Amplified, will grant you a period of increased super damage, guys. If you don't want this, you could also go with Void Flux for the La Monarch, but Defibrillating Blast is what really makes this build insane here, guys. And there you have it. Using this build, you can absolutely cheese not only the current Grandmaster Nightfall, Psyops, Battlegrounds, Cosmodrome. A lot of people have been struggling with this, trying to get those Lotus Eater God rolls. This build makes it a literal joke. But future Grandmasters as well, you can cheese with this build. And you've been seeing background gameplay of me doing a solo Lost Sector without ever swinging my sword. Everything just dies. I take no damage. It's actually absurd. You have got to try out this build. And so, guys, that's it for the video. Hope you enjoyed and found this informative. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus. That is linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.